Hi everyone, myself Dr. M. Lakshmi Prasad, working as an associate professor in the Department of Data Science in Institute of Aeronautical Engineering. So in this video, I'm going to discuss about tables. This is one of the way of presenting the data. So what are the data were collected from multiple sources like primary and secondary. So once the data is collected, based on the data what we collected, then we have to present in the form of tables. So this is the one of the way of presenting the data actually. And apart from tables, we're also having the graphics like bar chart and pie chart. So tables also plays a very important role. So let's see how we're going to do that. So one of the way of presenting data is that tables, right? So what is the presentation of the data actually? So the method by which the people is going to be organized and summarize the communication information. So using a variety of tools like tables, graphs and diagrams. So this is one of the way of presenting that. So tables. And so normally presentation, what is the purpose here is, so through this methods like tables, graphs and diagrams, so that people can able to organize the data and then make the communication information between the two persons. So if you look at the left side, here is the way of the presenting the tables. So some example based on the application, I can able to represent the content in the form of tables. Similarly, I can able to show this by using the graphs, so which is going to show the diagram on the right side. So normally the presentation of the data is going to be divided into two categories. So very first one is that tabular presentation, and second one is that visual presentation. And this visual presentation is going to be divided like graphical presentation and then diagrammatic representation. So these are the two types of representation that comes under visual presentation, and another form of presenting data should be tabular one. And then what are the uses of presentations? So some of the uses of presentation will be easy and better understanding of the subject, and then able to provide the first-hand information about the data, and which can also be helpful in future analysis and easier for making comparisons and very attractive. So these are some of the various uses of the presentation, right? So first one is that so each and every reviewer and reader can able easy and better understanding of the subject, and it can also be provide the first-hand information about the data, and which can also be helpful in future analysis and easy for making the comparison. Suppose if you want to compare the data of last 2 years, then the presentation is the only way to make comparisons very easy and then very attractive. And then what are the principles of presentations? Normally the data what we're going to be presented should be in simpler form, and then which can able to create some interest in reader. And another one is that we should all the time the presentation should be concise, but without losing this important details, and which can also be facilitate the further statistical analysis, and then should also be define the problem and able to should suggest the solution also. So these are the some of the principles what we have to be follow while presenting the data. So the data should be in simple form, and all the time what is the data we are going to present it, so make it as a simple, so that the reader can able to read the text very clearly and understand it, and then arouse some interest in readers, so that what is the data we're presenting, if we are going to make interest, so the readers so that the reader can able to understand what this is the data and what is it is meant for, like this. And then what are the presentation we're presenting, that should be concise one, but we should not able to losing the important details, and it should also be facilitate some further statistical analysis, and then the presentation should also leads to define the problem and the solution simultaneously. So very first one is that tabulation. So tabulation means it is a systematic and logical arrangement of classified data into rows and columns. So many of you know that the table should be a collection of rows and then columns. So same thing here also, but it should be defined as a systematic and logical arrangement of classified data into rows and columns here. And So how can able to represent? So this is a simple way of representing data. So one column I'm taking sport as one column and people I'm taking as another column, and then I can able to fill the rows like this. Sports like snooker, and then how many number of people, suppose the number of people participated in snooker is 106, I can able to write it. And similarly the tennis 45, and then gymnastics 54, and then swimming 82, and then track and 60. Normally this one should be comes in the form of text normally. So by analyzing this text I can able to represent the data into form of table. By once the data is going to be collected from either from the primary source or from through the secondary source like this. So what is the major significance of this tabulation actually? So this main significance of tabulation will be, you should able to simplify the complex data. So what are the data we collected, so, right? So that should becomes in that form of text. So that should be in complex in nature, so that if we are going to present this one in the form of a text, then it should be a simple one in that form of table. So it simplifies the complex data, and then unnecessary details and repetition of the data is going to be avoided in tabulation, right? So if you are going to present, suppose normally you are going to get the data in the form of text normally, and this text is going to be represented in the form of table. So while converting the process the text into tabular form, so what is the unnecessary details and then what is the repetitions of the data is going to be there in the text, right? So that type of this kind of problems is going to be eliminated here by making use of this tabulation. And facilitate comparison. So comparison should also be performed very clearly. So if I want to make a comparison normally in the text, then it should be difficult, right? So what I have to, suppose I want to compare, what should be the frequencies of number of persons who is having the height in between 62 and 61 and 62 to 60, like this I want to make comparisons normally. So that kind of comparison should also be easy by seeing the tables. And next one is that we should also use identity to the data. So you can give some identities, like suppose if we are having, this is the table one, suppose if we are going to build the number of tables, if we are going to take an application, suppose normally we are going to maintain some hundreds of tables for building this application normally. So for that, what I have to do, I have to use some identities of the data. What is the identity of this table, and then where this data is coming from. Suppose if it is coming from secondary data, and if it is coming from primary data, primary source, like this I can able to identify it. So identity should also be there, so that we can able to easily trace the data where it is coming from. And should also be reveals the pattern in the figures which cannot be seen in the narrative form. So can also able to reveals the pattern in the figures. So what is the text? Suppose that not only the text, so suppose the image is having some information about this, that one can also be the represented in the form of tables also, right? So not only the text, I can able to represent that images, so which can able to read some information normally. Suppose this is the data we're having. Suppose I got this data from the image. By seeing the image I can able to understand. Suppose the person is there, and then different persons is having some heights and then frequencies number, so that one is translated in the table here, so that that should be easy. So the text can also be converted in the form of table, right? So that these are some of the significance of this tables. So it can able to simplify the complex data is the first one, and then unnecessary details is going to be eliminated, and then repetition of data should also be avoided, and the facilitates comparison very easily, and which can able to use the identity data, and then it can also be reveals this pattern from the figures to the tabular form. And what are the rules you have to be followed for making tabulation? So very first one is that, so the number should be assigned to the table. So what is the table? Suppose if an application is having some 50 number of tables are available, right? So for that, what I'm going to do, I have to give some number. So this is the first one, and this is the second one, and this is the third one, like this. And then the title should be given to the table, but it should be in concise and self-explanatory. So these are the next one. What you have to do, you have to view that what is the title of this table. So title have to be provided. So this is the second step. And then the contents of the table should be defined clearly. So what are the contents of this table? So make this clearly specify the headings, and then clearly specify the content of the table also. And the subtitles, so what is there, so the subtitle should also be properly mentioned with the rows and columns, so no ambiguity should be appear. And then what are the columns are maintaining this second and third should be little bit different, should so that the ambiguity should be eliminated through that. And which can also be groups, the intervals into rows and columns should neither be too narrow and too wide. So what is the grouping of intervals? Suppose I'm going to maintain some intervals like 0 to 9, and then 10 to 20, and 25 to 32, and then 33 to 49. So like this I can able to grouping. So this type of thing should not be maintained all the time. The grouping should maintain uniformly, so that you can able to represent in the form of tables or figures should be very easy. So uniform means 0 to 10, and then 11 to 20, and 21 to 30, and 31 to 40. That uniform interval should be maintained clearly. And uh, the units of measurements must be clearly specified clearly wherever necessary. So the units of measurement, sometimes we're going to get the data from the experiments also, right? So at that time the units of measurement should we are going to consider. Suppose the person is going to weigh in like height, I have to take it in centimeters, and weight I can able to take it in kgs. And then suppose we are going to calculate the figures of the persons, right? I can able to take foreign heat or centigrade like this. So this the units of measurement should also be very important while representing the text in the table. And any short forms and symbols is there. So if used should be explained in the footnote. Suppose if the tables is having some symbols here. So at that time, what you have to do, you have to represent at the end of the bit of the table. So what is the symbol is meant for, like this. So everything should be going to be represented at the end of the table. And no place should be left in the body of the tables. Suppose if we are going to draw tables, means what is the rows and columns, right? So what is the values that are going to be filled, that should not be empty here, right? So all the time the value should be compulsory filled. There should not be any left blank here. And there should be logical arrangement of data in the table. So all the time we have to be arrange the tables either in the form of chronological order, or can based on the importance I can able to arrange it. So and the data also I can able to arrange it like that only, so that I can able to trace out easily. So these are the some of the rules what we have to be follow while drawing the tables before presenting the data here. Let me show this. This is the table I'm going to draw. So what I have to do, I have to mention the table number here, and then the table title should be given, and then what should be the row heading, and the rows will have to be filled, and then column headings that to be mentioned, that to be represented in the form of measurement, and this should be the table body, and then under column I take it as a total. So many of this note, right? And then what are the symbols I'm getting, and what are the symbols I want to represent this table, that should be represented at the foot of the table. And the source where this table is coming from, whether it is coming from primary source, or I can able to get it from secondary source. Like this I have to clearly specify at the end of this table. And what kind of precautions you have to be considered while drawing or representing the tables. So all the time the table should suit the size of the paper. So if the table is here, right, so this is the window, presentation window. So what is the table I'm presenting, that should be completely fit to the page, or completely fit to the window, so that it should be clearly visible what. So sometimes the table may cross this window, and then it may be hidden back to the window. So that type of things will have to be eliminated while presenting the table. And then captions and stuff should be arranged in some systematic order. So what is the captions where you are going to take, and then what are the steps, so that and all should be represented in systematic order. And then the units of measurement should be defined very clearly, giving in the table. So what kind of measurements, sometimes like kgs, and then centimeters, and then foreign heat, and then type of person. Like this I can able to make maintain some measurements, so that should be defined clearly. So if the measurements is wrong, mismatch, then everything goes wrong, right? So that the measurements should also be very important. And the figure should be rounded to avoid unnecessary details and in the table, and footnote to this effect should be given. So what is the figures is there, so that should be rounded off so that we can able to avoid unnecessary details in the table, and everything should going to be represented as the foot of that table, so where that is coming from. So these are some of the precautions you have to be follow. So the table should able to suit the size of the paper, and the captions and stuff should be arranged in systematic order, and units of measurement should be defined very clearly, and then the figure should be rounded to the unnecessary details, so in the table. Next one should be what are the different types of tables. So normally the tables are going to be classified into two types. So first one is that based on the purpose I can able to classify, or based on the content I have to classify. Suppose if I'm going to consider based on the purpose, so the tables are going to be classified in two types, like reference table and then text tables. Similarly, if I'm going to classify the tables based on the content, there should be simple tables and complex tables. And again, these complex tables will be divided into double table, treble, and then multiple table. Like this I can able to classify the tables into different types. So based on the purpose I can able to classify, and then based on the content also I can able to classify. So if it is based on the purpose, then it should be called as again divided into two types, like a reference table and then text tables. So if it is based on the content, then it should be a simple table, or you can able to call it as a complex tables. Again, this complex will be of three types, again double, triple, and then multiple. So reference tables normally can able to call it as general purpose, or primary tables normally you can able to call, and these tables able to present the original data for reference purpose, right? And it should also contain the absolute and actual figures and round numbers or percentage. So what is the table normally reference tables means? So it should be a general purpose table, normally can able to call a primary table. And these tables can able to represent the original data for the reference purpose, and it should also contain that absolute and then actual figures, and then round numbers or in percentages. So example, the tables in census record, appendices of publications. So at that time I can able to use this reference tables and all. And tabular presentation of data. So what are the various representations of the data we'll see now. So first thing, this should be the table number, and this should be the table name, what we call, and this should be able to call it as a row classifier. This one should be, and entire thing should be able to call it as a body, and this is the source note where this table is came from, and this should be the column header, and this should be the row header, like this. So these are the various parts of this table conventions or representations are to make, right? Okay, so table number, table that should be followed by the title of the table, and for row column indicators should be specified, and this and all will be the rows, and this one you can able to call it as a row classifier, and that thing should be called as a row body, and source of this table is going to be specified at the end of the table. So text tables. So text tables is nothing but a special purpose or a derivative tables normally. So text tables means which can able to construct it to present the selected data from one or more general purpose tables, and it should also brings out the specific point of answer to a specific question, and it should also be includes like ratios, percentages and averages, etc. And it should also be found in the body of the text. So normally the text table should be called as a special purpose or derivative tables normally, and so which can be able to be constructed to present the selected data from one or more general purpose table, and which can also be bring out the specific point of answer to a specific question, and it should also be includes ratios, percentages, averages, and should also be found in the body of the text. Suppose example, if I want to see the specific heats of the common materials I want to found, so materials I can able to define the column as material, and specific heat that to be into be measurement centigrade I'm writing, and liquid water what should be the specifically 4.18, and solid water 2.11, and water vapor 2.00. So like this I can able to clearly specify this columns and then rows and then use some measurements. Okay, so that two text tables all the time should be related to the experiments. And this one is divided two types just as I said, right? So first one should be simple tables, that should be related to only one characteristic, that should be able to called as simple table, like gender. So gender means boys and girls, and number of students like I can able to write. So if the data is going to be related to the only one characteristic, then it should be able to call it as a simple table. And double table, so if the data is going to be related to the two characteristics at the time, so that should be double table. So gender same thing, but what should be I can able to differentiate is I want to find out the number of vegetarians of boys and number of non-vegetarians of boys I want to find. Similarly, I want to find the girls number of vegetarians and number of non-vegetarians. Like this, suppose like this, right? So once the data is going to be related to characteristics, that should be double table. And what should be the triple table? So triple table is going to be divided into three categories. So again something, so gender, so boys and girls same thing here, and then food habit is also same, but within that vegetarians I can able to find what is the number of people below the age 20 years and above 20 years. And simultaneously I can able to divide this non-vegetarian also below 20 and above 20. So this type, so once the data is going to be related more than three, related to three, then it should be the triple table normally. So right, so same thing, gender is same here, boys and girls, and food habit are also same, vegetarian, non-vegetarian, but again still one more classification is done in between that vegetarian, non-vegetarian, that should be below 20 years and above 20 years for boys and girls I want to find, that should be the division. And similarly non-vegetarians also I can able to classify the boys and girls below 20 and above 20. And then what should be the multiple table? So multiple table is nothing but uh, so same thing I am going to take it out. So gender and then food habit. So gender is boys and girls, and multiple table means once again the boys is going to be divided into two categories like day scholars and hostelers, and similarly I can able to classify this girls should be in two types like day scholars and hostelers. Again the column is also going to be divided into categories, less than 20 and greater than 20, and non-vegetarians should also be less than 20 and greater than 20. So fields I can able to fill. So this type of specification should be able to called as the multiple tables, right? So that should be about the tables and what are the various rules how to be followed while presenting tables. So presenting data. So presenting data should be done in the form of tables as well as the graphs. So in this video I covered about the tables. So what are the various purposes of tables, and then what are the various uses of tables and how we're going to represent it, and what are the principles that are to be followed for representing tables, that and all I covered in this video. In next video I can able to discuss about the graphs and then charts. So what are the different types of charts and graphs we are having for presenting the data, that will I can able to cover in next video. Okay, so presenting the data is nothing but is the only method where the people can able to organize and summarize and then communicate information through variety of tools like tables, graphs, and then diagrams. And this presentation is going to be divided into two categories, so tabular and visual presentation. So still this visual presentation is divided into two types, like graphical, sorry, uh, visual presentations is going to be again classified into two types, like a graphical presentation and the diagrammatic presentation. And so what are the use of presentation? So use of presentation should be a easy and better understanding of the subject, which can also be provided the first hand information of the data, and then we should also be helpful in future analysis, and which can also make comparisons easy and very attractive. And then the principles of presentation should be all the time, the data what we're going to be presented should be in the form of simple one, and we should also be able to create some interest in reader, and all the time we should be concise the presentation without losing its important details. And the presentation should also be leads to the statistical analysis, and simultaneously you can able to specify the problem and the solution also. So tabulation is the one of the method. This is the systematic and logical arrangement of the classified data either in the form of rows and then columns here. So what is the data what we are getting from the text that should be represent the form of a table that should be specifying through columns and then rows. And what is the significance of this tabulations means which can able to simplify the complex data, and then unnecessary details and repetition of data is going to be avoided. And we should also be facilitate the comparison very easily and give some identity out of the data, where the data is coming from, whether it is coming from primary or secondary, and which can also reveals the pattern within the figures from the image to tables also. And what are the rules you have to be follow means, so very first one is that the table number should be given first, and then you have to specify the title, and then you have to be specify the contents of the table very clearly, and the subtitles should be properly maintained in rows and then columns, and the group intervals should be maintained properly, and then unique interval should be is the best one to specify. And then units of measurement should also be very important, and any forms of any short forms or symbols is there at the time have to be specified at the time at the end of the table, what we call it as a footnote. And no place should be left blank in the body of the table, and all the time you have to be arrange the data in the form of logical arrangement. And this is the simple view of the table. So title, and then the table number, row heading and column heading, that to be in measurements have to be given, and row entries is going to be specified, and remaining thing should be the body of the table. So then next one, what we are having the precautions, what we have to follow means, so what is the data we are presenting the form of table that should be suit the size of the paper as well as of the size of the window, and then the captions and steps also going to be arranged in systematic order, and units of measurement should also be defined very clearly. That is the important precautions what we have to be follow while drawing the tables, and the figure should also be rounded to the unnecessary details in the table. So the tables will be of two types, like based on the purpose I can able to classify as reference tables and text tables, and based on the content I can able to specify it as simple and then complex tables. Again still the simple tables are going to be classified like double, triple and multiple. So let's see one by one. So reference table. So reference table you can also call it as general purpose or primary tables. So all the time you can able to represent the original data, and all the time it should also be contain only absolute and actual figures of the data. So example, the tables in census record is the original one, and then appendices or the publication should also be original one. So that's why I'm able to call it as reference table, general purpose or primary tables. And the table presentations, some notations you have to be considered, like a table number, and then table number is how to specify, and table head title, and then column header I have to specify, and this should be the row classifier, and this should be the body and source of this table. And next one, text tables. So text tables should also be called as special purpose or derivative tables, which should be constructed from the selected data from one or more general purpose, and then which can also be bring out the specific point of answer to the question. So all the time the text table should also contains ratios, plus percentages and averages. And simple tables, suppose if the data is going to be related to only one characteristic, so that should be the simple table. Whenever the data is going to be related to the two characteristics, like gender, that should be boys and girls, and food habit will be again divided into vegetarian or vegetarian. That should be, the data is going to be related to two types, right? So that's why it should be double table. And next one, triple table means again same thing. So the gender is going to be divided into two categories, but the column is further divided into two more categories. Suppose vegetarian means age is above uh, below 20 years, and then age above 20 years. Again, I have to classify the non-vegetarians also two types. So above 20 years and below 20 years. This should be the one of the example of triple table. And multiple tables, so still I can able to divide the rows into further more sections, that, and then column will also be going to be divided furthermore into two more categories, and then extension of this triple table, then it should be able to call it as the multiple table. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.